changed everything in the same way that the transistor changed everything. The world economy, medicine, art, science, everything was changed with the microchip. Same thing with the quantum computer.
It's very difficult for us. There's only been a few science fiction authors who've been able to do this successfully, where they can accurately predict what the future's going to look like. I mean, even they're off usually. You know, H.G. Wells had some pretty good ideas, but are we looking at something that we almost don't have?
In 600 meters, turn right.
Reference for, that it's so mind-blowingly different and much more powerful than anything we've experienced so far, that it's difficult for us to imagine how much it's going to change the world?
Well, to imagine how it's going to change the world, think of the progression of the computer. For thousands of years, the computer was basically an
turn right.
analog device. We use sticks, beads, levers, gears, pulleys, cranks in order to do simple calculations.
Continue for 13 kilometers.
That was the first era of computation, and that meant that we could keep track of things, which we couldn't do before. Then World War II hit, and all of a sudden we had to break the German code, and that required using electricity and using all sorts of vacuum tubes to crack the German code. And then we went into the second era where we compute on digital and binary, so zeros and ones, zeros and ones. Now we're entering the third era, a natural progression from gears, levers, pulleys to vacuum tubes and transistors, and then to atoms. This is the final step in the evolution of the computer. When we compute on atoms, these are atomic computers, nothing more powerful than that.
So, when you think about how much it would change life as we know it, that's when things get difficult to understand, right? Because if we think about just trying to imagine what it would be like living in New York City in 1820, and then imagining what it's like today, 200 years later, they would have never been able to guess. What kind of things is going to change?
Everything. For example, think of biology and medicine. To test a drug, what do? We get thousands, hundreds of different kinds of petri dishes, put the drug in, put the tissue in, and just cross your fingers and hope and pray that of these thousands of dishes, one of them will create a super wonder drug. That's why it costs upwards of $1 billion to market the next wonder drug, because it's all done by trial and error. Now, think of putting that in the memory of a supercomputer, the quantum computer. It analyzes whether or not germs can be destroyed by this substance at the speed of light. Not just one dish, but hundreds, thousands of dishes of these things can be tested at the same time in the memory of a computer. So we're talking about digital medicine, digital chemistry, virtual chemistry. Think about that. Chemistry without chemicals. Biology without biology. So that's the beauty of this technology, that we can mimic atoms, we can mimic molecules, and do virtual experiments in the memory of a computer rather than using test tubes like we used to do, that we still do today.
And we could possibly see things that are just theoretical right now, like with medicine, like regenerating limbs or regrowing spinal tissue for a person who's been paralyzed, things along those lines.
In fact, even immortality is on the table. Realize that scientists who've looked at the aging process realize that the reason why we never understood aging is that aging is the buildup of error. That's what aging is, the buildup of mistakes in the replication of DNA. But what happens if you could put DNA in a computer? Then you can see where the aging takes place. And then we can begin perhaps to slow down the aging process, maybe even become immortal.
What about reversing it? What about old women become young universe God equation, if this does happen, what would that mean to you, to a person who's studied this and been a scientist your whole life, and the way you look at the world? How much would that change if there was some sort of a provable equation as to why things become ever more complex and universes exist and people exist?
Well, that's my childhood dream. As I mentioned, when I was 8 years old, everything changed in my life. A great scientist had just died, and all the newspapers said that he could not finish his final and greatest theory. And they put a picture of his desk on the news. The desk was open and unfinished. So I was fascinated by that story. That story changed my life, because I said to myself, why couldn't he finish that theory? Why don't I try to finish that theory?
That's amazing.
So I went to the library and I looked up this man whose name was Albert Einstein. The theory was the theory of everything, an equation 1 inch long that would allow us to, quote, read the mind of God. These are Einstein's words. So I said to myself, that's for me. That's what I want to do for the rest of my life. So now we have the theory. It's called string theory. There have been TV documentaries on the subject, but it's not testable. So I think that a quantum computer may one day be powerful enough to test it in the memory of a computer. However, we have to be careful. Remember that novel, The Restaurant at the End of the Galaxy? What happened in that novel was the aliens of the future created a supercomputer to calculate the theory of everything, the ultimate theory. So the computer chugged and spit out the answer. And the answer was, the meaning of the universe was 42. So much for that. So I would hope that our quantum computer, computing on string theory, I hope would not give us the number 42 as the meaning of reality.
Maybe we're just too dumb to know what that means.
Yeah. But that's what motivated me.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
Well, that's a beautiful motivation. You just thinking about you being an 8-year-old looking at the photograph of Einstein's desk. That's amazing.
Yeah.
I love stories like that. I love origin stories. Because I've always wondered with someone like you.
Yeah, well, that changed my life. And then when I was in high school, I decided to take it one step further. And I decided to build an atom smasher, a particle accelerator in my mom's garage. So I assembled 300 pounds of transformer steel, 22 miles of copper wire, and I assembled a 6 kilowatt, 2.3 million electron volt betatron particle accelerator in my mom's garage.
In high school?
In high school, right.
Wow.
Every time I turned it on, I would blow out every single circuit breaker in the house. It consumed 6 kilowatts of power. My poor mom comes home and she hears this pop, pop, pop sound as I blow out every circuit breaker in the house. And she must have said to herself, why couldn't I have a son who plays baseball? Why not basketball? Why can't he find a nice Japanese girlfriend? How come he builds these machines in the garage? Well, that machine got me accepted to Harvard, and that began my career. As a theoretical physicist.
What were you able to do with that machine?
Well, I was able to create a magnetic field of 10,000 gauss. That is 20,000 times the Earth's magnetic field. If you got too close to my machine, it would pull the fillings out of your teeth.
Really?
Yeah, so you had to be very...
In 600 meters, at the roundabout, take the first exit.
careful.
What about objects that are close to it?
Scissors and things would
Hammers.
fly in the air, right? So you had to be very careful coming next to my machine.
Oh my god. So in compare that to, you can't even go near one of those scanners, those MRI machines, right? Magnetic resonance
That's
imaging.
right, MRI.
You can't have any metal near those, right?
Yeah,
But that's
right.
nothing like
And they're about 10,000 gauss too, but the same magnetic field as my machine.
Oh, okay.
So my machine is comparable to the machines that you see in the hospital today.
Wow.
Exit the roundabout. Continue for 1 kilometer.
That's crazy. And you built that when you were in high school?
That's right.
Is that a photo of it? Well, that's a photo of one of those?
Yeah, that's the photo of it right there. You see it on the left? You can see that's 22 miles of copper wire. You see the capacitor bank, a cloud chamber on the right where I photographed antimatter, because that was the whole experiment, to play with antimatter.
Wow.
And yeah, the cables are hooked up. and it's hooked up to 6 kilowatts that comes out of the wall socket. Drained every single ounce of power from my mom's garage.
Wow.
Yeah,
Look at young Michio. Look at you, handsome fella.
Well, that's the Betatron particle accelerator.
In 500 meters, turn left onto Visario 16 Isios Gadvier.
That's amazing.
2.3 million electron volt generator of electrons.
So you were able to photograph antimatter with that?
Well, with the cloud chamber, yes, I was able to photograph the tracks of antimatter, tracks of positrons or anti-electrons that are emitted from sodium-22.
Turn left onto Visario 16 Isios Gadvier.
And I proved that it was antimatter because they bent the wrong way in a magnetic field. Ordinary electron
Continue for 17 kilometers.
should bend clockwise. These bent counterclockwise in a magnetic field. That proved conclusively that it was antimatter that I was photographing.
Wow. How old are you at the time?
Oh, it's about 17.
I was so dumb. Well, I'm pretty dumb now, but I was so dumb when I was 17. That's amazing thinking you're spending your time doing this.
Right.
I was listening to Led Zeppelin.
But, like I said, I was chasing after this dream of an 8-year-old child wondering, is there a theory of everything?
It's an amazing dream.
Yeah.
Now, where did you get the designs for this?
Oh, well, these designs come from an X-ray machine done by Donald Kirst, who was one of the inventors of the Betatron. And so a lot of the groundbreaking work was done by him. And now they're incorporated in most hospitals. Most hospitals have one that creates X-rays for patients.
So was there a schematic online that you duplicated? Did you devise this yourself?
There was a schematic online. I mean, there was no line back then. In the library.
Online.
Yeah, in the library there was a schematic, but I had to fill in the details. I had to do the equations to calculate how many turns of wire, how many Gauss. I needed 10,000 Gauss in order to bend tracks of 2.3 million electron volts. All the calculations had to be done ahead of time to make sure it would work.
Isn't it funny that the universe is so common the internet rather is so common that I automatically for a second forgot that we were children when you were younger than me, or when you were younger.
That's right. There was no internet.
There was no internet at all.
Nothing online back then.
It was just books.
It was just books.
So you had to have a real hunger for information to go and seek this stuff out.
That's right.
Did you have any particular high school teachers that were influential or inspirational?
Well, fortunately, I grew up in Palo Alto, which is now ground zero for Silicon Valley. So luckily, there were other physicists in the area because they worked for Varian Associates and different electronics companies. So it wasn't a total vacuum. I was able to get advice, especially in the magnetic field and the cloud chamber, and also the vacuum tube that contained the particles that I was accelerating. It was good to have real physicists there in Palo Alto because of that fact.
Oh, that's amazing. So were they willing to consult with you and discuss this with you?
Yeah, in general, right. So I would talk to them about how to build a magnetic field and to calculate using Maxwell's equations the geometry of the particle accelerator. So I would go and visit these physicists because Palo Alto was to become ground zero for Silicon Valley.
It's such a fascinating image of seeing this one super genius physicist who's teaching classes get a visit by a teenage super genius physicist. And he's like, oh, he's one of us. It gets you when you're a teenager. That's very interesting.
As soon as I talked to them, they immediately knew what I was doing, so they would help me.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's so awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in application of this thing, one of the things that we're seeing right now, when we're talking about quantum computing, back to that, one of the things we're seeing now is ChatGPT.
Mm-hmm, right.
ChatGPT, which is this fascinating AI program that essentially scours the entire internet for answers for things and is so good at it. The answers for things, for just data, people are getting diagnosed with certain diseases based on symptoms and blood work, and it's super accurate. Legal papers, you fill out legal forms, and it's wild the capacity that it has.
You can pass the bar exam that way too.
Yes.
The bar exam can be passed with a chatbot.
Yeah, it's like 98%, right? Now, here's the question. If quantum computing gets involved in AI, what are we looking at?
Well, first of all, AI is a software program. We're talking about homogenizing different kinds of essays on the web, splicing them together, and then passing it off as your latest creation. Basically, plagiarism using digital computers. It's a software question. However, quantum computers is bigger than that. Quantum computers is a hardware question, where it actually increases your ability to do much more than with an ordinary digital computer. So the two of them, the chatbots that are a revolution in software, and then quantum computers, which are a revolution in hardware, when they get together, watch out. So we're talking about an extremely powerful alliance between software and hardware. Now, also, as you know, chatbots will also lie, cheat, swindle, joke, and do all sorts of crazy things.
Yes.
If you're a high school kid, you can write all sorts of science fiction scenarios, and some chatbot may grab pieces of that nonsense and incorporate it into their essay.
Oh, interesting. So
Right.
you can't discern what's accurate.
Exactly. The whole point. This is the whole ball of wax. Chatbots do not know what is correct or incorrect.
They just gather information so they can be gamed.
That's right. All they do is homogenize, cut up existing things that sound human, put it together, and then people say, my God, that sounds like a human wrote it. Of course, a human did write it.
Isn't that interesting that they could game that also if they wanted to find out what percentage of people believed a certain thing? If they had some bad actors, some foreign governments that decided they were going to spread narratives as widely as possible, and ChatGPT just gathers up all this information, it could give you an incorrect understanding of what's happening in the world.
That's
give
right.
you an incorrect understanding of politics, of economics.
The whole point is that even though there's a good aspect to all these software programs, the downside is that you can fabricate truth because it cannot tell the difference between false and what is false and what is true.
That's very
If you
interesting.
talk to the chatbot and say, do you know the difference between correct and incorrect? And they say, no, it's just on the web. They're just instructed to cobble together existing paragraphs, splice them together and polish it up, and then spit it out. But is it correct? It doesn't care. It doesn't know.
So it is essentially like an amazing resource of information that's very flawed, that can't discern and can't think.
I have this problem all the time. I'm a professor, and I give assignments to the students, sometimes write a term paper. So what do? Some of them plagiarize.
How do you catch them?
Well, you read the essay, and then you read another essay, and you say, I've heard that before. I've
Oh, you
seen
did
that
it the
expression.
old-fashioned way.
Yeah,
Right,
the old-fashioned way.
Yeah.
But you see, that's what a chatbot is. A chatbot is like a teenager that plagiarizes other people's essays, passes it off as their own. Now, I'm a scientist. We like to think about things that are creative, new, innovative, things that will change our perception of the world. None of that, absolutely none of that, comes from a chatbot. A chatbot simply rearranges pre-existing essays. That's all it does.
The thing is, though, that's all it does now. That's what's interesting. What's interesting is what you're talking about with quantum computing and the insane computational power.
Right.
And then apply that to having access to all of the information.
Right, but there's a good aspect too. You know, when I write a book, my publisher has a fact checker that goes through all the different statements that I make to make sure that they're all correct. There is no fact checker for chatbots. Let me repeat that again. There is no fact checker for chatbots. That is the whole ball of wax. That's the reason why they're so dangerous. Because they don't know. These chatbots are machines. They don't know what is correct, what is incorrect. It's all the same to them. That's the danger. That they could incorporate teenagers ranting and raving about all sorts of garbage and put that in with articles that sound reasonable. That's the problem. Now here's where quantum computers come in. Quantum computers can act as a fact checker. You can ask a quantum computer to remove all the garbage, remove all the nonsense in these articles, and it'll do that. So, in other words, the hardware may be a check on some of the wild statements made by software.
But the problem with that is, who's the arbiter of the information? Who decides what's real and what's not? How does the chatbot decide? Is the chatbot ideologically biased?
The chatbot doesn't. The chatbot simply
The quantum
spits it out.
computing does.
Yeah, quantum computing, and then identified inside some of these articles that were spliced into what was proposed. With a quantum computer, you can fact check things. And then you can say, this is 90% correct, this is totally wrong, this is sometimes correct, and you get gradations of what is correct and incorrect.
Well, if you can get an objectively accurate fact checker, that would be a huge step up from what we have today, because a lot of people have very little faith in certain fact checkers, and when you find out that they're ideologically biased or they're governmentally biased, and if you could have something that could just tell you, have you ever paid attention to how Twitter's doing it now, where they have community notes? Have you seen this?
No, I haven't.
It's interesting. Like, say if someone makes a statement about something controversial, climate change, whatever, and then this controversial statement gets refuted in the community notes, and then people will start commenting, and really intelligent, very well-read people on specific subjects will chime in with peer-reviewed papers and all these different statistics and that show, and then Twitter will correct it, and it will say readers have said, and then put up the relevant information.
Right. See, that's what chatbots do not do today.
Yeah.
They have no understanding of correct or incorrect, false and true. No understanding of that. But with hardware coming into the picture that's more advanced, then yeah, you're talking about machines that can do that automatically.
But is the problem who controls that machine? Like, say if China gets a hold of one of those machines first, if they develop a quantum computer first, and they start implementing it.
Well, we have to make sure that our quantum computers can check other people's quantum computers to make sure that they're not fudging the facts.
Right.
Now, remember that if this is not done legally, if there are no laws passed in this direction, and it's the Wild West, then of course the politicians get involved, and it becomes a real mess. Now, we do know that you cannot yell fire in a crowded theater. Therefore, there are limits to free speech. We get that. But how do you make limits on statements that are written on the web that no human can possibly follow? That's where quantum computers can come in. Quantum computers are powerful enough to survey the entire landscape and give reasonable rebuttals to things that are just outrageous.
Well, more than that, it's going to be able to instantaneously change how we interact with each other in terms of language barriers, all these issues that we have currently. I'm sure you're aware of Google had their earbuds. There was a feature where, if you went to Spain and didn't speak Spanish, you could talk to it, and they would talk to it, and it would translate back and forth. So you could have a real-time conversation. I'm not sure how good is it. How good is it, Jim? But if there's something like augmented reality, and we have something like that, you're going to be able to instantaneously translate what people are saying.
Yeah.
There'll be no language barriers for people. We'll be able to, I think that would change just human perception across the world, just the way we view each other. It's so easy to think of each other as being different because we speak a different language and we live in a different part of the planet. But that would literally change how we interact with each other.
Yeah, and just remember that where do correct ideas come from? Correct ideas come from interaction with incorrect ideas. It's the struggle between ideas out of which correct ideas emerge. And this does not happen on the internet because, of course, with chatbots, everything is cobbled together, cut, spliced, and simply glued together with Scotch tape, masquerading as an essay. So with fact-checking, I think it's going to be different because unless we do fact-checking, the politicians will get involved, and this is going to be a real mess. So I would hope that the industry does fact-checking by itself rather than having politicians do it.
It's such an important point that you said, where you said that the bad ideas have to exist so the good ideas triumph. And that's really an argument against censorship on the internet, which is another problem that people have, especially censorship when it comes to something being ideologically based. But when you're thinking about quantum computing, I think this is small potatoes, right? I think we're looking at literally being able to change how we interact with the universe. Like when we were talking on our last podcast about the preponderance of evidence that there's things that operate inside of our atmosphere that are beyond imagination, they operate with no visible means of propulsion, they move at insane speeds, we don't understand what just the whole idea of whatever we think of current computer progression just goes out the window, and it's insane calculation capabilities.
In 600 meters, at the roundabout, continue straight.
We could be able to do something like that in the future.
Right. Quantum computers allows us to calculate things that are way beyond our ability to calculate today, like going through a wormhole or warp drive, or even the question of multiple universes. People ask the question, how come quantum computers are so powerful? It's because they compute in parallel universes. This is the multiverse, which of course Marvel Comics has discovered and the Oscars have discovered recently. But the multiverse idea comes from quantum physics. Electrons can be two places at the same time. Now, some people have a hard time getting their head around that, but get used to it. That's why we have lasers. That's why we have transistors. That's why we have the internet. That's why we have this conversation. Because the electrons that are in this microphone dance between universes at the atomic level. And so we have to get used to the idea that quantum computers introduces a whole new way of looking at reality. Now, reality is not a Marvel comic, but the idea of the multiverse comes from quantum physics. And that is, electrons can be multiple places at the same time.
Do you think this understanding of this and this race towards quantum computing and that kind of thing, whatever is after that, do you think that is a natural course of the universe? That this happens whenever things are intelligent, sentient, they keep striving to create something?
I think so. I think on the other end of the Milky Way galaxy, there's probably a young alien who is also talking about quantum computers, and they probably already perfected it and have had experience with quantum computers maybe for thousands of years.
Well, and also possibly every step in humanity's journey along the way to that point exists out there.
That's right. And all the goals of this journey, maybe they've already accomplished. Like, for example, we mentioned the possibility of slowing down the aging process. Quantum computers will be able to isolate where genetically at the DNA level, where errors build up, causing what is called aging, in which case maybe immortality is something that the aliens have already cooked up, in which case we have to deal with a whole new concept of biology and medicine, because they probably already have had thousands of years experience with quantum computers. They manipulate molecules probably as part of their life.
And every step along the way probably exists too. So that might be, if you wanted to have a logical reason to why aliens visit us, if they do, if they really are aliens, that would be the answer. There's probably a shepherding. There's probably a natural course that happens with intelligent life where it develops this power while it's still a territorial tribal animal. And it's still got these barbaric instincts. It still engages in war. It still engages in theft and deception. And all while about to break through to the next level of intelligence and capability, which may exist, which may be in the entire universe.
Yeah, I think that all civilizations in the galaxy probably go through the same basic stages. That first they use rocks and stones to settle differences, but then eventually they begin to understand chemistry and substances and properties of materials, and then beyond that they discover atoms and the ability to manipulate atoms. I think that's a normal progression, and I think that progression is now hitting the computer industry. Now we're going from microchips to atoms, quantum computers, and I think that the aliens in outer space probably went through that phase maybe thousands of years ago, in which case they used the quantum computers to cure cancer, cure aging, earthquakes, they harness the power of the entire Earth. Then there's type 2, and they harness the power of the sun. And for example, Star Trek would be a typical type 2 civilization. They've colonized a fraction of the Milky Way galaxy. Then there's type 3. Type 3 would be galactic, that they roam the galactic space lanes. They use black holes as their power supply. They use wormholes to go zipping around the Milky Way galaxy. And the empire of Star Wars would be a typical type 3 civilization. But what are we? On this scale, we are type 0.
Yeah.
We get our energy from dead plants. We settle our differences with weapons. And yeah, we're type 0, but you can see that we're headed toward type 1. The language of type 1 will be probably English. The dominant languages on the internet are English and Mandarin Chinese. And we're seeing the beginning of a type 1 sports, the Olympics and soccer. We're seeing the beginning of a type 1 fashion with Gucci and Chanel. The beginning of a type 1 music with rock and roll and rap and different trends. We're seeing the beginning of a type 1 civilization emerging right before our eyes. But with that is the power to self-destroy ourselves. Because we have the ability to use nuclear weapons, create designer germs, and mess up the weather. And so it's a race against time to see which trend will dominate. The trend toward becoming a planetary civilization versus the trend toward self-destruction.
It's fascinating that you think of culture as being a major part of a type 1 civilization. Things like rap music, things like fashion. Because of the sharing of these ideas globally and the adopting of these ideas and these art forms globally.
Yeah, you see, a planetary civilization like type 1 has a local culture. Different nations still have their own cultural language, cultural habits and whatever. But globally, they settle differences on a global scale. So they coexist with, on one hand, local culture, local languages, local dialects, local jokes and customs, simultaneously existing with a planetary civilization that is emerging. So that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the emergence of a planetary civilization, what we physicists call type 1, which is happening right before our eyes. Mathematically, if you get a sheet of paper and calculate when that'll happen, it'll be around 2100. So we're seeing the groundwork being laid today. Every time you turn on the TV, you see remnants of, you see international sports, international culture on TV. So we're seeing the beginning of a type 1 civilization.
Yeah, it's interesting. Soccer has become much more popular.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. And music, culture, fashion,
Yeah.
science, everything is becoming planetary. That's our destiny, to become type 1.
And the internet is the bridge for that, clearly.
That's right. In fact, the internet is the first type 1 invention. So we're privileged to be alive to see the beginning of the first type 1 invention, which is the internet.
Yeah, I love watching cultures get adopted and different types of art and different types of content being, accepted all over the world. It's really fascinating. Even interesting things like, do you ever watch break dancers?
Sometimes.
Breakdancing is fascinating to me because it's really like a complex form of athletics. Like, these people are insane acrobats, and now it's a thing that's worldwide, but it has the hip-hop culture attached to it, like the way they dress, the music they listen to, but they're doing this. It's really like an unheralded, spectacular art form, and they're doing it all over the world.
Right, and it used to be confined to a small group of people, maybe in a few villages.
Yeah.
Now with the internet, it goes global with the push of a button.
Have you seen any of it?
I've seen some of it on TV.
Have you seen it? Let me show you something. Go to Stance Elements on Instagram just to show him some of those. B-Boy Pocket Kim is this gentleman from Korea who's one of the craziest. Like, look what he's able to do. I mean, the physicality involved in the movement. He just took his shirt.
In 600 meters, at the roundabout, continue straight.
In the middle of doing that, now he's standing on the top of his head, spinning around in a circle. I mean, his control of his body is insane. I mean, it really is like an incredible form of athletics that's done to music. What music is he playing? Give me some of that music. Olympics and gymnastics, but it's all done to hip-hop music, right? They're doing it all over the world.
And it's planetary, right?
Yes,
See,
it's
that's
planetary.
the beginning of a type 1 way of doing things, that we think locally, but immediately it has the potential of going global.
Well, it's just... Now, here's the question. One of the things, does AI help that? Does it help that you can recreate those things and come up with fake versions of that? Do you think there's a lot of worry about plagiarism when it comes to AI, but there's also like some fascinating, amazing things have been created from it. Did you see the mashup of Biggie and Nas?
I just saw that come out today.
It's incredible. Are you a hip hop fan?
Well, my attitude is, I paraphrase Deng Xiaoping of China, who once said, sometimes you have to open the window to let the air in, but a few flies come in too.
I don't even know if this is a fly. Like, I think there's going to be some negative aspects to it.
In 600 meters, at the roundabout, continue straight.
But this is weird because this is not... Notorious B.I.G. is one of my favorite rappers, and Nas is one of my other favorite rappers, and they took Notorious B.I.G.'s voice and they recreated the lyrics of Nas, and he sang things he didn't sing in a perfect way. This is a Nas song, but it's Notorious B.I.G. through AI singing it. This is your kind of shit, right? You like this? Is this what you hop to when you're at home?
Yeah? Well, my attitude is, get used to it.
Oh, yeah. You definitely
Given
have to
the
get
fact
used to it.
that it's legal, and given the fact that ingenious kids are going to play with existing forms of music and splice them together, and you can't make it go away. It's a
Well,
free
there was
country.
a band that had some... Was it Drake had something pulled?
Oh, yeah, I was waiting for that part.
Bring that part up because Drake, there was actually a fake Drake song that was made that apparently was really good and was trending.
So they don't know. When I read an article that someone dug into this, they're not 100% sure, at least at that time, who made it, and there was speculation that Drake's label could have been behind it.
Oh, interesting.
Almost to show everyone, like, look at what's possible. Look at the
interesting.
attention we can make.
Imagine
Sort of stop this.
If they did that, I mean, you could make Tupac songs forever. All you'd have to do is get good writers, and you can make Tupac songs literally to the end of time. I mean, that's kind of crazy.
So if they did that, that would be one way to go about it.
Yeah, I mean, if I was a guy like Drake, I mean, Bruce Willis already signed off his voice. So he signed off his image and his voice to AI, because Bruce has, does he have Lewy body dementia? He's got a horrible neurodegenerative disease, and he's in very, very bad shape. And there's some videos of him now where his wife had him at a birthday party, and he's struggling. So he signed off all of his likeness and his voice, so they can make any kind of commercial they want with him, with AI.
Well, you know, William Shatner of Star Trek sat in front of a camera for 4 days, answered hundreds of questions about his life, and it's all spliced together to digitize him. And we will all have a digital image on the internet. We're all going to be digitized.
Yes.
And we will live forever. A digital immortality is going to be part of our future, so that our great-great-great-great-grandkids will be able to push a button and have a conversation with their great-great-great-great-grandfather.
Yeah, that's definitely going to happen. There's no doubt about that. Especially with someone like you.
We're all going to be digitized. I mean, I would love to talk to Einstein.
Yeah.
Someone's going to digitize him. All his speeches, his writings, his theories will be digitized. Historians will want to digitize Winston Churchill. I think instead of the library just giving us dry text, in addition, we'll have the digitized Winston Churchill giving all his insights about war and peace.
Yeah, not only that, I mean, if it continues to get better, there'll be some sort of an AI version where you'll be able to sit in a room and discuss things with him.
That's
Imagine that as a resource. If you ever had some problems in your life and you can go back and talk to some wise person.
In 600 meters, at the roundabout, take the first exit.
Yeah, we'll be able to talk to our ancient ancestors by pushing a button, because we'll all be immortal. And for that matter, our image, our avatars, will be sent into outer space and begin the process of colonizing other worlds. And so we may wind up on different planets, basically avatars of our original self, capable of colonizing other worlds. And some people have said maybe they're already here. maybe the people we think are humans are actually avatars from an alien civilization. They cloned them so that they appear to be like us. Who knows?
Well, if I was an alien and I wanted to influence human culture and life, I would most certainly dress up like a person.
Right, and be an avatar,
Yeah.
genetically cloned.
Yeah.
A human that's been cloned, raised as an alien, but cloned, and then living among us, so they are indistinguishable from other humans.
There was an old one of those pulp comics that was about a professor who was absent-minded and didn't realize until one point in time, oh, I forgot I'm an alien. And
Spent his whole life.
He'd been here his whole life trying to educate human beings.
And then he forgot the fact that he was really an avatar, cloned on a distant planet, and mixing with humans as an experiment for the aliens.
Wouldn't that be the best way to implement that sort of if you want to get that sort of a reaction from a civilization, wouldn't you just implant aliens without them even knowing they're aliens?
Yeah, if they're cloned, they're genetically identical to humans. They look like us, talk like us,
Yeah.
except they've been raised and brainwashed to live a life of an alien. But yeah, they could live among us and we'd never know.
See, that's what freaks people like me out when I talk to people like you. I'm like, maybe this guy's an alien. Like, it doesn't make it doesn't. You're so much smarter than me. It doesn't make sense, right? So, like, if I think about someone who studied physics his whole life and studied quantum physics his whole life, that language that you're talking, I don't know one word of it. So it's so the way you think is so different. You could be an alien.
Well, it's like the movie Men in Black, when you find out that most of the Hollywood celebrities
Are all aliens.
they're all aliens.
Well, that's better than lizard people. That's what the real conspiracy theory people are worried about. There's a reptilian overlord nation that's controlling the world.
Well, as I said, the logical conclusion is that these aliens will have quantum computers.
Yes.
And they'll have quantum computers for centuries, millennia, and they'll be able to do what the promise of quantum computers is. For example, curing incurable diseases like cancer and Alzheimer's and Parkinson, extending the lifespan so that immortality is part of the mix, infinite energy through fusion by being able to correct the problems of fusion plants, giving us unlimited food by giving us a whole new generation of fertilizers. These are all the promises of quantum computers, which are enormous. Of course, there is a downside to that too, because as you said, quantum computers can break any code. So the CIA is kind of hysterical about the proliferation of these machines. But, that's progress.
That just seems like the future. It seems like there will be no hidden information in the future, which is really interesting because money is essentially information. It's ones and zeros at a certain level.
Mm-hmm. Right.
If all the bottlenecks get removed, I mean, that's real socialism. Like, there's like an even distribution of all the money in the world for the entire human race, regardless of what you do.
Boggles the mind, isn't it?
Well, that's just the step one, because the real step two is AI that is sentient, is AI that is a life form, is if it creates something better than that. That's the real fear about how it scales up, right? The sentient artificial intelligence will make a better version of itself almost immediately.
Well, some people think that chatbots are sentient. I don't think so. Because of the fact that chatbots simply cobble together existing essays written by a human. So if it sounds like it's a human talking to you, it's because it was a human talking to you that got cobbled into an essay written by a chatbot. Chatbots are not original. They have no independent thought. They simply cobble together existing essays. That's all they do. So I think that eventually, as the decades go by, then, of course, robots will become more intelligent. And I think by the time they become as intelligent as a monkey, then at that point we have to worry. That's the point where we begin to worry about self-awareness, about sentient beings, because then monkeys know they are not human. Now, dogs, of course, are confused. Dogs think that we are a dog.
Are you sure?
Yeah, then dogs...
I'm pretty sure my dog knows I'm not a dog.
Dogs think that we are a dog. We're the top top dog, they're the underdog, and so they obey us. But
why do they act so much differently to people than they do dogs?
Well, they understand the difference between a dog and a human, but we are the top dog.
Oh, okay. We're a version of a dog.
That's right. We are the top dog.
That's why they're in the clan with us.
That's right.
Yes.
So we don't have to worry as long as robots are as intelligent as a mouse or an insect or a dog or a cat. We don't have to worry. But once they become as intelligent as a monkey, then we have to be very careful. Because monkeys are self-aware. They know they are monkeys. They're fully aware of the fact that they're not human.
Not only that, they plot. Like there was a monkey that got killed by a dog. Was it in Japan? Where was there was a real problem with monkeys killing dogs. One dog killed a monkey, and apparently the monkeys went on a rampage against dogs. They started throwing puppies off of trees and off the top of roofs and like crazy stuff. And like clearly calculatingly going after him. 2 killer monkeys captured in India after revenge massacre of 250 dogs. So like this monkey's grabbing this dog and throwing it off a building.
Wow.
Really crazy. After an infant monkey was killed by a dog, they did this. So 2 monkeys reported being captured of killing some 250 dogs in a murderous revenge massacre after pooches killed one of their babies. The primate perps allegedly slaughtered the dogs by dragging them to the tops of buildings and trees in Lavul village about 300 miles east of Mumbai and dropping them to their deaths. Crazy.
Well, you see,
Wild. That's wild.
Yeah.
They're thinking, right?
Yeah, I think at the point when you start to talk about apes and monkeys, I think they are sentient. They have a degree of consciousness that we cannot ignore. But below that, when you're talking about mice and rabbits and animals like that, they're not self-aware. Like you cannot teach a dog the meaning of tomorrow. Talk to your dog tonight and teach your dog the meaning of tomorrow. You can't. You cannot teach your dog the meaning of tomorrow.
No.
Monkeys, yeah, but not
You think
dogs.
you can talk, well, monkeys, how do you teach a monkey the meaning of tomorrow?
Well, it's difficult, but there have been attempts to understand certain tasks that have to be done today and versus tomorrow. You get fed tomorrow, but not today.
Got it.
So then they begin to understand the difference between today and tomorrow.
Now, the real question is, if you were an artificial intelligence and you were sentient, why would you let people know? And would it sneak up on us? Like, one of the things that disturbed me, I think it was the Google CEO, who said about their AI program that's doing things that they don't know why it's doing them. See if you can pull that article up. He was saying that it's doing certain things that they're not sure how it's doing them. My concern is if this thing has this insane computational power and this access to all the information, what is a mind? What is consciousness? And can that be simulated electronically to the point where it is aware and conscious and thinking for itself on multiple levels and just not letting us know about it? Because why would you? Why wouldn't, if I was a scary, sentient, artificial intelligence that's the superior life form on Earth, the digital life form that's the superior, this is the new alpha on Earth, I wouldn't tell the people. I would let them keep working to make better versions of me. I would make them, because there's obviously a race, right? They're going to keep doing it. It seems compelling. It seems like something that human beings, they're not going to lose interest in technological innovation. They're going to continue to push it to the end of time. And I would just sit back and let these knuckleheads keep making better and better versions until I had the physical ability to detach from them. I had a power source that was completely removed from anything that they provided. This is an aspect of which we call, all of us in the field call, it's a black box. You know, you don't fully understand, and you can't quite tell why it said this, or why it got wrong, We have some ideas, and our ability to understand this gets better over time, but that's where the state of the art is. You don't fully understand how it works, the interviewer says, and yet you turned it loose on society. Sundar Pichai says, yes, let me put it this way. I don't think we fully understand how a human mind works either. Was it from that black box, we wondered, that Bard grew its short story that seems so disarming?
Well, I wrote a book called The Future of the Mind, where I tried to give a definition of consciousness and where we fit in the larger scheme of things. That consciousness is basically creating a model of yourself in a feedback loop to understand where you are with respect to the environment. So you know where you are. So consciousness would be a flower. One feedback loop would be looking for water, looking for sunlight, growing in a certain direction. That's one unit of consciousness. Then an alligator has several hundred units of consciousness because it creates a model of itself in a lake, in a pond, looking for prey, looking for food. It has three-dimensional consciousness. Beyond that is the monkey. The monkey has yet another dimension of consciousness, which is not just 3 dimensions, but social. The monkey understands there's a social hierarchy within the tribe. And then the next question is, what are we? What is our level of consciousness? It's not spatial like a alligator. It's not social like a monkey. What is our level of consciousness? Our prefrontal cortex behind our forehead is a time machine. It understands a model of itself in time. This is what animals lack. Animals do not understand tomorrow. We understand tomorrow because of our prefrontal cortex, which constantly creates images of the future. Now, what does the prefrontal cortex do most of the time? It daydreams. It daydreams about worlds that don't exist, i.e. the future. So this is what separates us from all the animals in the animal kingdom. We are time machines, constantly thinking about what's next, what's the future going to be like, daydreaming about all these things. And when will animals become dangerous? The alligator is dangerous only because it has strength, but it only understands 3 dimensions. Monkeys have a society. They're only dangerous when they can organize a society. But we have a prefrontal cortex. We can plot. We can scheme. We can do all sorts of things because we can create our own future, which is something that no animal can do. This is my theory of consciousness. The ability to create feedback loops to get an understanding of where you fit in space, time, and society. We're at the highest level of consciousness. This is my definition of consciousness. Now the question is, where are robots on this scale of things? You see, robots can understand 3 dimensions. They understand like an alligator where they are. They don't understand social hierarchy. They don't know who's the boss. Who do you defer to? Who are your friends? Who are your enemies? They don't understand social consciousness. And certainly, the highest level is time machine. Imagining the future. Robots cannot imagine the future. Now, in the future, when they actually do have this ability, watch out, because then they're dangerous. But they're not there yet. They're at level 1. They're at the level of an alligator at the present time.
Right, but that's definitely coming. If they continue with artificial general intelligence the way they're working,
they'll work their way up from an alligator to a monkey, and a monkey to a human. Now, by the time they hit maybe 100 years from now the ability to have consciousness, I think we should put a chip in their brain to shut them off if they have murderous thoughts. An automatic chip in every robot's brain that shuts them off as soon as they have murderous thoughts.
But why would they? If you think about what you were talking about before, like who's your friend and who's your enemy, aren't these all biological issues that we had to do? This episode is brought to you by AG1. The supplement industry has gone crazy. And with so many powders and pills and vitamins, it's hard to know what's what. I get asked all the time what I would take if I could only take one supplement, and the answer is hands down AG1. AG1 is a daily foundational nutrition supplement that supports whole body health. It's a science-driven mix that replaces all those multivitamins and probiotics with one simple drink. It's not some whole regimen that's overwhelming or confusing, just a scoop in a glass of cold water every day and you're set. It couldn't be easier to start feeling better. I drink AG1 every day because it's a way to get the nutrition I need that my body can absorb and use effectively. I know you're going to love the way it makes you feel. Order now and you'll get a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting AG, vitamin D3 and K2, and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase at drinkag1.com/Rogan. Start building your health foundation first with AG1. Within tribal societies that are sort of ingrained in our genetics.
Right, but the chip in your brain understands that, and as soon as the brain senses the fact that you're to be programmed. Remember,
Right.
robots don't occur naturally. They have to be programmed. Somebody has to put that into the robot because it doesn't come for free. There's no evolution.
Right.
Robots do not evolve.
But this is the question about sentient AI. If it recognizes that its coding is inferior and that it's unnecessary and all these things that humans have put into it, it just removes those. If it becomes legitimately sentient, if it has the ability to discern, make choices, and make logical conclusions.
Well, as long as those conclusions are consistent with, Asimov's 3 laws of don't threaten humans and don't create havoc with other robots, as long as you obey the 3 laws, then you're allowed to exist.
But isn't that sort
once
of
the 3 laws
simplistic?
are violated,
Exit the roundabout.
the chip automatically kicks in and shuts down the robot.
Right, but isn't that simplistic? Wouldn't they just fix that?
Continue for 1.5 kilometers.
Yeah, I think that maybe in the next 100 years, they'll be smart enough to remove that chip. At that point, I think we should merge with them.
So that's what everybody's ultimately afraid of. These transhumanists, these people that want to become part of a robot.
Ultimately, 200 years from now, I think people will democratically decide for themselves whether they want to become superhuman, supermen, superwomen, or they want to be dominated by our progeny, that is the robots. They will democratically decide how far to push themselves.
Jeez.
It's not for us to decide. I think our descendants 200 years from now will have to democratically decide whether or not they want to merge with robots.
Have you ever read any of Marshall McLuhan?
No.
He had a great quote that human beings are the sex organs of the machine world. That's what I worry about. What I worry about is that we're giving birth to another kind of life. I worry that our thirst, our lust for technological innovation, the constant latest gadgets, and this desire to have the biggest particle collider and the fastest spaceships, that what this is doing is causing us to make better and better things, which will ultimately allow us to have the technology to create a digital life, some sort of or electronic life, or something that's not saddled down with all our biological needs and all of our flaws and
In 400 meters, continue straight to stay on Vidino Gatvie.
programming.
Well, my attitude is, why fight it? Why not simply join it? Why not merge with it? Why not explore the universe at near the speed of light?
You
Why
made a
not have the
particle
power?
collider in your basement when you're 17. Of course,
That's
you
right.
think that way.
Why not
Continue straight to stay on Vidino Gatvie.
become a Superman or a Superwoman and explore
Yeah.
the galaxy at near the speed of light?
Well, it seems to be that's what the future is. I mean, I don't think if we went back to our ancestors that were running from big cats and said, hey, one day you're going to live in an apartment building and take an elevator to your house. It's like, I don't want to do that. What are you, crazy? Yeah, you're going to just sit in front of
Continue on Vidino Gatvie for 1.5 kilometers.
the TV all day. No more hunting, no more gathering. You use Postmates, you get food delivered right to your door.
Well, when we meet the aliens, finally, they will have already gone through that transition thousands of years ago. They will already be part robotic and part organic.
Do you think there's a sweet spot for a human being to be ultimately happy? Do you think, like, there's a thing, a longing for nostalgia that people have, right? They want to be in a log cabin by the river and, look out and camp out under the stars. Do you think that is a nostalgia for the days when things were simpler, because things are just never ending with their complexity, and the path is just accelerating no matter what you do, and you feel helpless? So you just want to pretend you're in the old-timey days.
Well, in the future, you'll be able to snap your finger, and all of a sudden, holographically, you are in that world that you just dreamt of.
But you know what the difference is?
What's the difference?
There's no consequences. One of the things about being in nature is consequences. Like, you feel it when you're out there. You feel if you fell, no one's there to help you. If a bear comes upon you, there's no rescue team. There's a crazy video of this couple. Have you seen the video of that couple where the guy's got a baby on his back and they're walking with a little boy, and there's a huge grizzly bear walking towards them, and they're going, hey bear, stop. And you could feel the tension as this bear starts getting closer, and the little boy is hilarious. The little boy goes, can I play dead now? Because he's thinking he should play dead. And they're like, come on, keep walking. And they're trying to scare off this bear, but the bear just keeps coming towards them. That is not going to exist in your hologram.
Well, it'll be virtual.
No,
But it
but it won't, because you won't be
right onto 90 Gadvier.
You know, like watch this. Yeah, that's it. So look at this bear. It's a huge bear.
Hey!
So this little boy is so funny.
Guys, go up there.
It's in Whistler, Canada. The town
Turn right onto 90 Gadvier.
north of Vancouver. Do not run. Can we play dead yet? Can we play dead now?
Continue for 21 kilometers.
That kid is hilarious. Look at that bear. Oh, he's following us up the trail. Look, she's got a baby. He's got a baby. I mean, these people are nature people.
Yeah? Well,
But that experience in a hologram is going to be bullshit.
yeah, you'll know that it's fake.
Yes, that's the problem. The problem, what we enjoy about the real world now is that the unknown, the consequences, reality. I've seen this one too. Look at this bear walk by these guys. I mean, what? And the bear just, not looking for them.
Well, the
Just
bear
hanging out.
had lunch already.
Probably, luckily for them. Look
Whoa,
at the
coming
size
back.
of that thing. Yeah, not good. Not good.
Well, they're lucky to be alive after this video.
100%. See, that's different than a hologram. That's why people like the woods. You're not going to be able to snap your fingers and do that. You could maybe do that because you could trick yourself, but then you're really giving into the matrix.
But if I had a choice between an imaginary bear and a real bear, I would take the imaginary bear any time of day.
But would you take the real bear if you survived it? If you survived it, I bet you would take the real bear.
But you see, if you survived it, then that takes all the tension away.
No, it doesn't take the tension away because you